Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and to another episode in the Sydney Railroad build. If you're watching last time, you'll have seen me start on the Helix, get most of the first lap done and also the entry points on the lower level. In this instalment, I will finish the Helix. It's quite a large Helix, but it is only 4 laps. And once I got the first lap done, it went quite quickly. So without further ado, let's just head out to the workshop and finish that Helix.
I've now installed all the foam rubber roadbed and a few yards of track. I started doing the track in this area, that way I can now replace the next piece of sub roadbed anytime I want to. But I've got a few more pieces of track I want to get down before I go in for lunch. These last 3 pieces are not installed yet, they're just curved to shape and placed roughly in the right places. So let me just install a few more yards of track and I will be right back. Well, that is most of my weights used up, and I think that's as far as I'm going to go for this morning. I've got lots of stuff to take care of inside, and then I'm meeting some people this afternoon for a steak dinner. So I'm going to go inside, get cleaned up and continue working inside. Don't go away. I will check in with you again tomorrow. It's Friday morning. I've just come out here, removed all the weights, and the first thing I'm going to do today is put the feeder wires in. I checked on my computer to see what colours I had to use, so I just get the appropriate rolls of wire and put feeders on all of that, and then I think I'm going to do the side fences before I continue with sub roadbed for the next lap. So let me get on with that and I will be right back. Well, it looks a little different now from when it did this morning. I've got a lot of the safety fences on. I started with this first piece, the wide piece that's clamped, does double duty as the backboard for the dispatcher's desk. Those clamps need to stay on for a while, so I've been working on other stuff. I've also put the rest of the safety fences on around the first lap. They're a little shallower than elsewhere. Everywhere else I've been going with 1¼ inches above the plywood. Here I'm just 1 inch. The reason for that is that it gives slightly more reaching clearance between the laps of the Helix. I've also reattached this piece of sub roadbed, hopefully for the last time, and I've worked out what I need in the way of risers. They are indeed exactly 4 1/8 inch high. So I'm going to cut a bunch of those and then get a few more pieces of sub roadbed on, then some more foam roadbed, and then some more track, and then some more feeder wires. So I will go around to about that point, just where the clamps start, hopefully without getting in their way, and I will check in with you again later. Don't go away. Here is the method of joining the 2 portions of the Helix together. I've got a piece of 5/8 inch plywood as a splice plate under the joint, and this is just a test to make sure we have plenty of clearance, and I do. I didn't buy 5/8, I don't need very much of it, so I just took a strip of 3/4 inch and thinned it down on the table saw. And now we see the reason for elongating the Helix. Not only does the greater lap length allow us to gain that extra 5/8 of an inch that we need to maintain full clearance with the splice plate, but it also means that the joint can be on straight track instead of minimum radius curved track, and that's going to be a lot more reliable. The reason for using a 5/8 splice plate instead of a 1/2 inch is that the nominal 1/2 inch plywood is actually only 12 millimeters thick, so the 1 inch screws I'm using will come through if I drive them deep enough to go under flush. The only way to avoid them coming through would be to leave the head sticking out, and I don't want to do that. Hence the reason for taking an extra few minutes to make some 5/8 stock. Anyway, let me just get back to work, and I'll see you later. Prior to going in for lunch, I got a couple more pieces of the sub roadbed installed. I left the clamps on, had a good long lunch break, and then since lunch I have laid the foam rubber roadbed and track, another half a lap. These clamps have been on here for about 5 hours now. I think that should be enough. I didn't want to take them off any earlier. I was a bit concerned about it wanting to spring straight because of the width of it. So I think, as a precaution, I will leave a couple of clamps near each end and just remove the ones that are in the way. And then I'll get another couple of pieces of the sub-roadbed installed. Well, here is the start of the raised joist that is going to give more headroom for the dispatcher to get into his office. It raises it by about 9 inches. I had to put a temporary leg in there and cut away the temporary beam. This end is now done, so I can move this leg to the other end, cut that end out, and build the other permanent support at that end. So let me do that, and I will be right back. Well, that is the raised joist finished, and all the temporary framing removed. I've still got to neaten up the ends when I do the fascia, make it look neat. The bottom lap of the Helix is hung from that. There will ultimately be a splice plate across here attached to the beam. And it is attached to the two parts of the Helix only by screws. So there'll ultimately be a piece of fascia glued to it, and then that piece of fascia and the joist comes out for transportation and then gets put back into place once the Helix is assembled. That gave me a few extra inches of clearance for the duck under. Anyway, it's almost 5:30, but before I call it a day, I think I'm going to install one more piece of sub-roadbed. So let me do that quickly, and I will see you tomorrow. Well, it is bright and early Monday morning. I started by getting rid of the clamps and the weights that I left over the weekend. I've got a few things I want to take care of this morning before I continue the Helix. I've got to remove this last section of sub-roadbed and get the lower fences in. It'll be a lot easier to butt it into that beam with the sub-roadbed out of the way. And while I'm doing that, I may as well get completely caught up with the fences all the way around. I have already this morning marked the track locations on these last two pieces of sub-roadbed, just so I don't forget to do it before the fences go on. So I'm going to turn the camera off, get to work, and I will be right back. Don't go away. Well, this morning it just seemed like I did a little bit of everything. Did some bench work, some fencing, well, actually a lot of fencing, roadbed, track, and feeder wires. I started off this afternoon with a little bit of a clean-up. I also put this shelf in here this morning because it'll be really useful while I'm building it, and probably also for the client once it's installed. I haven't put an edging piece along the front. It's not really meant to be a work desk or anything like that. It's just a useful storage shelf. Anyway, when I did the fencing, I just laid them straight across the joints. So this one I've got to cut, and there are four others over that side I've got to cut as well. So I'm going to do that before I forget, and then I'm going to continue. Next task will be to get more sub-roadbed around at least another half a lap. So let me get on with that, and I will be right back. Well, that is about all I have time for today. It's actually been a long day. I've been out here since 7 o'clock, and it's now about 5:30. The track and feeders have reached the halfway point. These copper ties are where the electrical gap is going to be to break it into two sections. And above that, I've got one more full lap of sub-roadbed installed. So the sub-roadbed is 3/4 of the way there. So a lot of progress today. I'm going to go inside, get some food, and I will check in with you again tomorrow. Well, after yesterday's excellent progress, today is another day of the same. I've already removed all the clamps and the weights that I left on overnight and cleared all the tools off the top level of the Helix. The next tasks are to mark out and lay another lap of foam roadbed, another lap of track, and then the feeder wires, noting of course that it's a different set of feeder wires. Here is the joint between the lower and upper Helix sections. And then once I've got all that track and wiring installed, it'll be time for the final lap of bench work. So that is my target for this morning. Let me get to work and I will be right back. Well, there is the foam roadbed and track caught up with the bench work. The next task is to install the feeder wires, but I'm going to have to go inside and check my notes because I don't recall what colors I'm going to be using for the upper helix. So let me go look that up and I will be right back. Don't go away. Well, that is all the feeder wires and fences for that lap done. I guess now it's time to start on the bench work for the final lap. So let me get on with that and I will check in with you again later. Well, there is the bench work for the top lap of the helix, all finished. This is where the helix ends and it just goes straight from there. Well, not quite parallel with the benchwork edge, comes in a few inches in front of the paper mill. So I think that was a pretty good morning's work. I'm going to go in now, get some lunch, and I will continue this afternoon. Don't go away. Well, this afternoon there is no more track or roadbed or bench work installed, but if we look inside the helix, we can see that I have done most of the wiring. All the bus wires are in, and most of the feeders are hooked up. Obviously, I haven't done the upper lap yet, because I haven't even built that, and I've still got a couple more pairs of feeders down here to do. But that will be a task for tomorrow. It's around 6 o'clock, it's time to go in and feed the dogs. So I will see you again tomorrow. Don't go away. Well, this view probably looks fairly familiar, except that the helix is now one lap higher than it was yesterday. This morning is going to be pretty much a repeat of yesterday morning. I've got to do one lap each of foam roadbed, track, feeder wires and safety fences. This is already the top of the helix right here. For that point it just goes straight out over the lower deck. You know the procedure by now, so I'll just get straight back to work and I'll check in with you again later. Before I lay the track on the last lap of the helix, I wanted to show you a little wiring trick. I'm now using surface wiring on all helixes. You can see the wires stay on the top of the sub roadbed instead of going underneath where they can hang down and snag trains on the track below. Before I lay the track, I cut gaps in the foam. Note that the inside gap is a lot bigger than the outside one. That's because there's only one wire that has to pass under the outside track, whereas 3 of the 4 pass under the inside track. I thought I'd just show you that before I lay the track, because it won't be so obvious afterwards. Well, here is the exit bench work from the helix. Track level at this point is about 52 inches off the floor, and the last 3 inches of climb will be done in the open around the end of the peninsula. I have an 1/8 of an inch step at this point, so these posts had to be cut at 4 inches instead of 4 1/8, and this is where the thick roadbed will start. The tunnel portal being about here where my hand is. This piece of bench work is wider than it needs to be, but I can always trim it later. At the moment it comes all the way out to the edge, giving me the option of attaching the fascia to it later if I need to. And also at this point where the tunnel portal is, there is plenty of width to support the stonework. The next task is to get a couple more yards of track in. I'm going to terminate the track at this point, and then I've got to get 2 more pieces of fencing and 1 more set of feeders, and then I can finish wiring it up. So don't go away, I'll get on with all that and I will see you later. Well, the helix is now done. All the wiring is done. Here's the exit. The track stops here for now because that is part of the upper deck. We have this very useful shelf in here, and here is the dispatcher's desk. The open floor area in the dispatcher's office is about 40 inches this way by 58 that way.
Well, that's all for this week. Hope you enjoyed the video, found it useful or interesting, or both. And I hope to see you back next week. I'm not expecting it to be another instalment in the Sydney Railroad build. I'm thinking I might produce another layout design for next week. I haven't decided yet. But until then, thanks for watching and bye for now.